Hello, you're welcome back. All right, so we are gonna be looking at ratios and proportion. All right, so now the question is, what is a ratio? All right, ratio is simply the relationship between quantities. All right, okay, that shows how one quantity is greater than the other quantities. Okay, now for example, if I have A and B in the ratio of A is to B, okay, and that ratio is simply means that A is to B is 2 is to 1. Now, what does it mean? Okay, it simply means that A is actually greater than B by 2 because the ratio 2 here is for A, while the ratio 1 is for B. Okay, so A for every value of B, A is always 2 times B. All right, so that simply means that A is always 2 times B. All right, that's exactly what that ratio means. So which simply means that if it happens that B happens to be 20, all right, if B happens to be 20, then definitely you will have A to be equal to 40. So now ratio is really very important because you can use ratio to share in sharing. Okay, ratio is good in a sharing formula. I'm gonna give you a typical example. Okay, let's look at a typical example where you have a quantity, an amount that is shared in the ratio. Okay, let's say A is to B is to C is the ratio. Okay, 1 is to 2 is to 3. Okay, and the amount that was shared, the total shared amount of that A, B, C actually shared is, let's say, is uh, basically, let's say it's 1,000, right? Let's say it's 1,000. So now the question is, how do you get the share of A, share of B, and the share of C? Okay. All right. Now share of A. All right. A share is gonna be equal to the ratio A divided by the total ratio. Then multiply by the amount that is shared. That is how you actually use ratio to share a particular amount. All right. So the ratio A is 1 divided by the, please pardon me, 1 is to 2 is to 3. That's so divided by the total ratio. Total ratio is 1 plus 2, then plus 3. Okay, let me actually I want something that we one. Okay, let me actually give a ratio that we actually that can solve easily. Okay, so let's look at 2 is to 3 is to 5. Okay, so all right, so I just changed the ratio. Okay, so A is the ratio for A is 2, B is for 3, and C is for 5. So I'm looking at 2 divided by the total ratio, 2 plus 3 plus 5. Then multiply by the total amount that was shared, 1,000, right? So let's flow. So that's being the case, I'm going to have 2 all over 10, then multiply by 1,000. So cancels this. So that means the share of A is going to be 200. So A actually got 200. So the same goes with the share of B. Okay, let me put that in the quotation mark. Ratio of B is actually 3 divided by the total ratio, which is 10, then multiplied by the amount that was shared. So if I divide this, so I will have 300. So B will actually have 300. Of course, if it is in Naira, that will be 300 Naira. Then C, the share of C Okay, so yeah. Oh, what did? Okay, so C ratio is 5 divided by total ratio 10 multiplied by the total amount, that is 1000. And if I should do this, okay, so this is gonna be 500. So you now discover that if I should sum the three shares should give me the total amount that was shared. Remember, the share of A was 200, the share of B was 300, and the C share is 500. Okay, if I still add this entire shares, I'll still have the total amount, which is gonna be 1000. All right. So that is ratio. Basically, that is how we use ratio to share a particular quantity. Okay. Now, let's talk about proportion. Okay, proportion is also a relationship, all right, between quantities, in which when one increases, the other also, either when it's a relationship between basically two quantities. Okay, in proportion we are comparing two quantity relationship between two quantities. So that relationship is such that either the two quantities actually increase at the same time, or increase or decrease at the same time, proportionally. That's called proportionally, all right? Or when one actually increases, the other decreases. So that means invariably now we will have basically two types of proportion, okay? We have a direct proportion. So if the proportion, that relationship between those two quantities is direct, okay? So two of them will increase proportionally and also decrease proportionally. All right, one increases, the other decrease at a particular proportion. All right, that's why it's called, as if one increases, the other will also increase at a particular proportion. That is why it's called direct. All right, but if it is inverse proportion, if we are looking at inverse proportion, then the reverse is the case. In inverse proportion, you're looking at a situation where when one quantity actually increases, the other will decrease, okay, in a particular proportion. So now we are going to be looking at an example that illustrates this two type of proportion, right? I'm going to start with let's start with direct proportion. So example of a direct proportion is, okay, wage, okay, is actually proportional to the hour, let's say time. Wage is proportional to time. Yeah, there's some instances that the wage one receives is proportional to the time the person actually put. Okay? The wage one receives is proportional to the time. So now, let's look at a typical example. Okay? If a man is paid, oh, please pardon me, is paid 1,000 naira per hour. Okay? If a man is paid 1,000 naira for 5 hours, okay, how much? How much? How much is his wage? Is his wage? How much is his wage for 20 hours? So this is a typical example of a direct proportion, and I'll tell you exactly how you solve question that deals with direct proportion. Okay? So now we are looking for the wage of this man, and this direct proportion. Why? Because we know that wage actually increases with the hour that you put in. Okay, so once you look at that proportion, you know whether it's direct. Okay, because if it is direct, simply means that when one quantity increases, the other should increase. Okay, so how do we actually solve proportion? Okay, now the very first thing we're going to do, we are going to, for you to solve proportion, you should know the proportion for just one quantity, just one. Okay, when the quantity is just one. Okay, let's see how we do that. From the question, we are told that 5,000. Okay. Okay, let me write in the sentence. Okay. Right, for 5 hours. 5 hours wage. According to the question, I'm solving now. 5 hours wage. Okay, is, according to the question, is said to be 1,000 naira. 1,000 naira. So if 5 hours was 1,000 naira, so I'm going to do the first, before I can be able to get the wage for 20 hours, okay? For an increase, I need to get the wage for just 1 hour, all right? So now, if 5 hours wage is 1,000 naira, then 1 hour wage, what do you think 1 hour wage will be? Of course, you know very well that 1 hour wage will be less than 1,000, okay? And of course, indirect. So for you to get 1 hour wage, all you just need to do is to divide, that's 1,000, okay, by 5. And of course, if I should divide 1,000 by 5, I should have 200, okay? Yep. So that means the man wage for 1 hour is 200, okay? So that is in proportion. You always get the quantity, the rate for just one, okay? For one, before you can now get what you're looking for. You always, after you state what was given, the proportion that was given, you get for one. That's how you solve proportion. So having gotten one, because for 5 hours, this man actually earns 1,000 naira. Then for 1 hour, then he would definitely earn 200, because I'm going to divide 1,000 by 5. All right. So now, having gotten how much he earned for just 1 hour, then it's easy for you to get for 20 hours. Okay. So 20 hours wage now will be a multiple. Okay. I'm going to multiply the wage for 1 hour. Okay. 20 hours wage is going to be equal to 1 multiplied by the wage for 1 hour. Please pardon me, 20. 20 hours wage will be 20 multiplied by the wage he collect for 20 hours. This 20 hours, all right? Please pardon that. The wage you collect for 1 hour, 20 times 200, and that will definitely be 4,000. So for 20 hours, this man is collecting 4,000. Okay, so this is direct proportion. All right, so let's talk about inverse proportion. As you already know, for an inverse proportion, when one of that quantity actually increases, okay, the other will decrease. Okay, now let's look at a typical example. A typical example of inverse proportion is, okay, number of workers. Number of workers is inversely proportional to the time of work. So what does that simply mean? Okay, of course, variation, proportionality and variation, they have the same symbol. All right, this is their symbol, but this type of in this case, the proportion, we are actually dealing with word problems. Okay, now in later part of this particular tutorials, you're going to do variation. okay, that is different from what you have here, okay, somehow different. That doesn't require mathematical formula. So this one we are dealing with actually stating a kind of a proportion in a word form, but later parts of this video, when you treat variation, it deals with formula, right? But that is just by the way. So I just use this particular symbol here is we use it for proportion, and I'm using 1 all over time, showing that number of workers, okay, the number of workers is actually inversely. So when something is inverse, that means the expression at the right hand side should be 1 all over that particular quantity. So what does it actually mean? Okay, this actually means that if you increase the number of workers, the time at which work is done will reduce. Of course, you know that is true. Okay, the time it will take 5 persons to do the work is gonna be less than the time it will take 1 man to do that particular work. Okay, so let's look at a typical example. Okay, 20 men. 20 men built a house. In 50 days. How many days? How many days will it take? Will it take 10 men? Okay, to build the same house. Okay, so you know how what we do? We state what was given, okay, the proportion that was given, then we will now find the value for just one, right? For 1 man. So 20 men, okay, worked. Let me shorten my sentence, okay? Worked for 50 days. So that way, the very first thing I'm going to find is how many days it will take 1 man. We work. How many days it will take 1 man, okay? So, of course, you know, if 20 men, since because we are dealing with invest now, 20 men work for 50 days, then a man will work for more, okay? So, please take note. Remember, when it's going to be, if it is less, you divide. If it is something that will be more, you multiply, okay? So since I know that a man will work for more, so that means a man will definitely going to work for 20, will work, okay, for 20, of course, times 50. So a man will work for, that should be 1,000 days, okay? A man worked for 1,000 days. So having gotten the amount it will take a man to work for 1,000 days, then I now can get how many, the time for 10 men. So then that simply means that 10 men now we work. We work for, okay? Remember, 10 men will always work in a lesser time than that of 1 man, okay? So 10 men definitely is going to work for 1,000 in this case now, because it is, we are looking at less, okay? So it's going to work for 1,000 days, which of course is the number of days a man would take to work it divided by, okay? Divided by 10. So 10 men will work for 1,000 divided by 10. That's going to be 100 days. Okay, so that is basically how we actually work on proportion. Okay, so we are going to be looking at some other example in proportion, all right? So see you in the next video. Thank you very much.